The apple cobbler was still warm when I pulled it from the oven that Sunday morning. Steam rose from the golden crust, filling my small kitchen with a scent of cinnamon and butter. I'd been making this recipe for 30 years, ever since Lydia was a little girl who'd sneak bites before dinner. Now she had children of her own, and Sunday dinners at her house had become our tradition. I wrapped the dish carefully in towels and placed it in my car. The drive to Lydia's new house took 20 minutes through tree-lined streets I'd watched change over the decades. Her home was beautiful, purchased with Nathan's finance job money and his mother Patricia's connections. I'd always felt a little out of place there, with my teacher's pension and modest sedan, but family was family. When I knocked, Nathan answered. His smile was tight, uncomfortable. "Marion, we weren't expecting you." "It's Sunday," I said, holding up the cobbler. "I always come for Sunday dinner." He stepped back reluctantly, and I walked into the dining room. The table was set for 8, every seat filled. Lydia, Nathan, their 2 children, Patricia, and 3 people I didn't recognize. Laughter filled the air. Wine glasses caught the chandelier light, and a roast sat centerpiece on the table. There was no seat for me. Patricia saw me first. Her smile was sharp, triumphant. "Oh, Marion! What a surprise!" Lydia looked up from pouring wine, and I watched color drain from her face. "Mom," she said quietly. "I thought I mentioned we were keeping it small this week." I counted 8 people at the table. My hands tightened on the cobbler dish. "The kids have been so busy with activities," Lydia continued, not meeting my eyes. "We're trying to simplify things. Cut back on the chaos, you know." Nathan's colleague laughed at something Patricia said. Nobody moved to make space. Nobody suggested I pull up a chair. They all just stared at me, this inconvenient woman holding a homemade dessert in a house full of people who didn't want her there. I set the cobbler on the side table. My voice came out steady, though my chest felt hollow. "Of course. I understand completely. We'll call you this week," Lydia said, but she was already turning back to her guests. I walked to my car in the fading October light. Through the window, I could see them laughing again, the moment already forgotten. Patricia raised her glass in a toast. Lydia smiled. I drove home and the cobbler sat untouched on my counter for 3 days. Thursday afternoon my phone rang. Lydia's name flashed on the screen. "Hey, Mom." Her voice was bright, artificial. "How are you?" I pressed the phone to my ear, my other hand gripping the kitchen counter. "I'm fine, sweetheart. How are the kids?" "Oh, you know. Busy. Soccer practice, piano lessons. It's been absolutely crazy. Too busy for Sunday dinner." The question came out sharper than I intended. "Mom, I told you. We're just trying to keep things manageable right now. It's not personal." "Not personal." I'd seen 8 people around her table. I'd seen Patricia's satisfied smirk, Nathan's uncomfortable shuffle, Lydia's inability to look me in the eye. "Of course," I said softly. "I just wanted to make sure everything was all right." "Everything's perfect. Listen, I have to run. Tommy has practice in 20 minutes. Love you." She hung up before I could respond. I stood in my kitchen, the phone still pressed to my ear, listening to silence. 42 years of motherhood, reduced to an inconvenient phone call between carpools. I made myself tea and sat by the window. Outside, October leaves scattered across my late husband Daniel's garden. He'd planted those roses the year before he died. Some things grew strong without constant tending. Maybe I needed to do the same. Saturday morning I went to the farmer's market. It was something Daniel and I had done together for years, and I'd kept the tradition alive. The air smelled of fresh bread and apples, and I was examining a basket of late-season tomatoes when I heard Patricia's voice. "It's perfect timing, really," she was saying to a woman I recognized from the country club. "Nathan and Lydia are expanding onto the Holt property. Second home, very tasteful. The zoning finally came through." I froze, my hand still on a tomato. "That farmland's been in Daniel's family for generations," the other woman said. "Is Marion selling?" Patricia laughed, a sound like breaking glass. Oh, Marion. She's holding on to dirt and memories. But Nathan's handling it. You know how sentimental old women can be about these things. The tomato slipped from my fingers and rolled across the table. The vendor caught it, giving me a concerned look. I managed a smile and moved away, my heart pounding. That land. Daniel had inherited it from his father. 40 acres of farmland just outside town. We'd never developed it, just leased it to local farmers. Daniel had loved knowing food grew there, that something productive came from his family's legacy. The deed was in both our names. Even after Daniel died, I'd kept it that way. Joint ownership with survivorship rights. Patricia was bragging about expansion plans I'd never heard of. The next afternoon, Lydia's car pulled into my driveway. I watched from the kitchen window as she got out, carrying a bakery bag and a bottle of wine. She was smiling, but it was the smile she used with difficult parents during teacher conferences, not the real one I'd seen throughout her childhood. Mom! She hugged me at the door, too tight, too long. I brought that Chardonnay you like. We hadn't shared wine in months. I led her to the kitchen, where she unpacked pastries from the expensive bakery downtown. Croissants, not the simple cookies I usually made. I've been meaning to stop by, she said, arranging everything on plates. Things have just been so hectic. So I've heard. I poured water, not wine. Patricia mentioned something at the market. About expansion plans on the farmland. Lydia's smile faltered. Oh, yes, actually, that's part of why I'm here. She pulled papers from her purse, spreading them across my kitchen table. It's nothing complicated, Mom. Just some routine paperwork. The bank needs confirmation on the deed transfer so we can secure the construction loan. I stared at the documents. Legal jargon filled the pages, but certain words jumped out. Transfer of ownership. Full rights and privileges. Permanent conveyance. Deed transfer. I asked softly. Just a formality. You know how banks are. She pushed a pen toward me. We're planning a beautiful guest house on the back 40 acres. The kids would have more space to play, and you'd always have a place to stay when you visit. When I visit, not when I lived there. When I visited what used to be my family's land. I'll need to read through this, I said, pulling the papers toward me. Lydia's jaw tightened. Mom, it's really straightforward. Nathan's lawyer already reviewed everything. We just need your signature so we can move forward. Then another day won't matter. I met her eyes. This is the land your father worked his entire life to preserve. I want to understand exactly what I'm signing. For a moment, something flickered across her face. Guilt, maybe. Or frustration. Of course, she said finally. Take your time. But Mom, the bank deadline is Friday. We really need this finalized soon. After she left, I sat at my kitchen table until the light faded. The documents were dense, full of legal terminology that made my head spin. But I understood enough. If I signed, Lydia and Nathan would have complete control of the property. They could develop it, sell it, mortgage it. Daniel's legacy would become whatever they decided it should be. My hands trembled as I set the papers down. That land was supposed to be for Lydia eventually, yes. But as part of her inheritance, not as a tool for Nathan's ambitions and Patricia's social climbing. I thought about that empty chair at Sunday dinner. About Patricia's smug comments at the market. About Lydia's fake smiles and rushed phone calls. They didn't want me at their table. They just wanted my signature. I picked up my phone and called an old friend. Gregory answered on the third ring. Marion. It's been too long. Gregory had been Daniel's lawyer and friend since college. He'd handled our will, our property transfers, every legal document we'd ever needed. He was semi-retired now, but his mind was still sharp. I need your advice, I said, and explained everything. The dinners I'd been excluded from. The overheard conversation. Lydia's sudden visit with papers I didn't understand. I heard him typing as I talked. Send me photos of every page, he said finally. Don't sign anything yet. The next morning he called back. His voice was grave. "Marian, if you'd signed those documents, they would have had complete ownership. They could sell the entire property tomorrow and you'd have no say. No rights. Nothing." My coffee went cold in my hands. "Can they do that? Just push me out?" "If you give them permission, yes." He paused. "But here's what you need to understand. That land is still jointly owned under your and Daniel's names with survivorship rights. Unless you voluntarily transfer it, they can't touch it. They need your signature." "What should I do?" "Don't confront them yet," Gregory said. "Let them think you're compliant, just slow. Meanwhile, we'll review your options. And Marian, start documenting everything. Every conversation, every interaction. If this goes where I think it might, you'll want proof." I spent the afternoon organizing. Every voicemail Lydia had left. Every excuse about busy schedules. The papers she'd brought. I started a journal, dating each entry carefully. If they wanted to play games with my family's legacy, I'd learn the rules first. Lydia called that evening. "Mom, have you had a chance to look at those papers?" "I'm still reviewing them," I said calmly. "There's a lot to understand." "Mom, I told you. Straightforward. We're on a timeline here. Then Nathan's lawyer can explain it to me directly. I'd like to understand what I'm signing." Silence. "Then, fine. I'll have him call you. But Mom, this is important. For our family's future." Family. Not Daniel's family. Not the generations who'd worked that land. Their family. Nathan's expansion plans and Patricia's social ambitions. Over the next week I played my role perfectly. I returned calls slowly. I asked questions that sounded confused but were actually very specific. I let Lydia think I was a sentimental old woman who couldn't understand modern legal documents. Meanwhile, Gregory and I met twice. We reviewed my will, my property holdings, every asset Daniel and I had built together. "There's an option," he said during our second meeting. "A charitable trust. You could transfer the land into a non-profit structure honoring Daniel's memory. It would preserve the farmland permanently, support agricultural education, and ensure it could never be sold or developed." Could Lydia reverse it? No. Once established and registered, it's permanent. The land would serve the community Daniel loved, exactly as he would have wanted. I thought about Daniel planting those roses. About him walking the fence lines of his family's farm, talking about legacy and stewardship. About Lydia as a little girl, running through wheat fields and picking wildflowers. "Let's do it," I said. 2 weeks later, I overheard Patricia hosting another dinner. I wasn't there, but my friend Catherine called me afterward, her voice apologetic. "Marian, I thought you should know what they're saying." Patricia had mocked me to her guests, called me that sentimental old woman clinging to dirt, and laughed about my confusion over simple paperwork. Nathan had joined in, joking about his technology-challenged mother-in-law, who couldn't understand modern property management. "And Lydia?" I asked quietly. Catherine hesitated. She didn't laugh. But she didn't stop them either. That silence hurt worse than the insults. My daughter, who I'd raised to stand up for what was right, sitting quiet while her husband and his mother mocked me. The woman who'd sacrificed to send her to college, who'd babysat her children countless times, who'd loved her unconditionally. I thanked Catherine and hung up. Then I called Gregory. "Let's finalize the trust," I said. "As soon as possible." Paperwork took 3 days. Gregory walked me through every detail. The Holt Family Educational Land Trust would own the 40 acres outright. The land would be preserved for agricultural education programs, community gardens, and youth farming initiatives. A board of local farmers and educators would manage it. Nothing could be sold. Nothing could be mortgaged. The land would serve the community forever. I signed my name on the final document and felt something shift inside me. Not anger. Not revenge. Just a quiet certainty that I'd done what Daniel would have wanted. The notary's stamp made it official. I sat in Gregory's office, holding a copy of the trust documents, and felt my spine straighten for the first time in weeks. "The county will register this tomorrow," Gregory said. "Once it's recorded, it's permanent. Irrevocable." "Good." I ran my fingers over Daniel's name on the letterhead. "He would have loved this." "He would have been proud of you," Gregory corrected. "This takes courage, Marion." That evening, Lydia showed up unannounced. Again. I saw her car pull in and took a deep breath before answering the door. "Mom, we need to talk." She pushed past me into the house, agitated. "The bank is asking questions. They need that signature by Monday or we lose our loan approval. Patricia has been calling me every day. Nathan's getting pressure from his investors. I told you I needed time to review. It's been 3 weeks." Her voice rose, sharp and unfamiliar. "What is there to review? It's our family land, Mom. Dad would want us to use it." "Your father wanted many things," I said softly. "But I don't recall him wanting his daughter to exclude her mother from family dinners while scheming to take her property." Lydia's face went white. "That's not fair. Isn't it? How many Sundays have you kept it small? While hosting 8 people. How many times have you been too busy to see me but found time for Patricia's friends? This isn't about that. This is about you being stubborn and selfish with land you don't even use." I pulled papers from my pocket. Not the documents she'd brought me. Different ones. "I did sign something, Lydia. Just not what you expected." She grabbed the papers from my hand, her eyes scanning frantically. I watched her face change as she read. Confusion first, then disbelief, then something approaching panic. "What is this?" "Holt Family Educational Land Trust." She looked up at me. "Mom, what did you do?" "I ensured your father's land will be used exactly as he would have wanted. For agriculture. For education. For the community he loved. You can't do this. That land is worth millions in development potential. Nathan has investors waiting. We've already started architectural plans. Based on land you didn't own and permission you didn't have." My voice was calm, steady. "Tell me, Lydia, when exactly were you planning to invite me to dinner again? After I signed? Or were you hoping I'd just fade away quietly?" She stared at me, papers trembling in her hands. "You're doing this because of Sunday dinners. Because your feelings were hurt. I'm doing this because you forgot where you came from." I took the papers back. "Your father built his life on that land. We could have sold it a dozen times. We could have developed it ourselves. But Daniel believed some things matter more than money. Legacy matters. Community matters. Family matters. We are your family. Are you?" I asked quietly. "Because family doesn't exclude each other to impress their in-laws. Family doesn't manipulate and mock. Family shows up, Lydia. You stopped showing up months ago." She opened her mouth, closed it. Tears streaked her cheeks, but I couldn't tell if they were from guilt or frustration. "The trust is registered," I said. "It's done. The land will serve agricultural education programs. It will feed families and teach children. Exactly what your father would have wanted." Lydia left without another word. Through the window, I watched her sit in her car for 10 minutes before driving away. My hands shook as I made tea, but underneath the trembling was something solid, something that felt like peace. The next morning Nathan called. His voice was controlled rage. "Do you have any idea what you've done? We have investors lined up. Architectural fees paid. Deposits on materials. All based on securing that land. Based on land you didn't own," I said calmly. "That seems like poor planning, Nathan. Patricia warned Lydia you'd be difficult. But I thought you loved your daughter enough to help her future. I love my daughter enough to show her that some values matter more than property value. That's a lesson she seems to have forgotten." He hung up on me. Within an hour Lydia called, then Patricia, then Nathan again. I let them all go to voicemail. My phone buzzed constantly with texts, threats, pleas. I silenced it and spent the afternoon in Daniel's garden. The roses needed pruning before winter. As I worked, I thought about that empty chair at Lydia's table. About being dismissed as an inconvenient obstacle to Nathan's ambitions. They'd wanted me compliant and quiet. A sentimental old woman who'd sign away her husband's legacy because she didn't want to cause trouble. They'd counted on my love for Lydia overwhelming my backbone. They'd miscalculated badly. 2 days later, a letter arrived from the county clerk. The trust was officially registered. The Holt Family Educational Land Trust was now a matter of public record. 40 acres of prime farmland, permanently preserved for agricultural education. I called Gregory. It's really done. It's really done. They can't touch it, can't sell it, can't develop it. That land will serve your community for generations. I hung up and let myself cry. Not from sadness, from relief. I'd protected what Daniel built. I'd honored his memory in a way that mattered. And if Lydia couldn't see that yet, maybe someday she would. Patricia's banker called her first. I heard about it from Catherine, who heard it from the country club gossip chain. Patricia was absolutely livid, Catherine told me over coffee. Apparently, the deed showed a charitable trust instead of the private ownership Nathan's loan application claimed. The bank started asking questions. What kind of questions? The kind that end with loan denials. Catherine stirred her coffee. Nathan apparently told them the land transfer was imminent. Secured funding based on future collateral. When the bank verified the actual ownership status. She didn't need to finish. Nathan's house of cards was starting to collapse. That evening Lydia called. Her voice sounded hollow, exhausted. Mom, can we talk? Please. I'm listening. Nathan's loan was rejected. The bank says the land shows as trust property, not private ownership. They're questioning everything now. His investors are pulling out. Patricia's furious. Pause. This is destroying our family. I didn't destroy anything, Lydia. I preserved something your father built. Something that should never have been used as collateral for Nathan's expansion plans in the first place. But we needed that money. We have bills, commitments. Nathan promised his investors. Nathan promised things he had no right to promise. That land was never his to use. It could have been ours. You could have helped us. I could have been invited to Sunday dinner, I said softly. I could have been treated like family instead of an obstacle. But we don't always get what we want, do we? The silence stretched long. Finally Lydia whispered, I'm sorry. About the dinners. About everything. Are you sorry you did it, or sorry it didn't work? She didn't answer. She just hung up. The local paper ran a notice 2 weeks later. Holt Family Farmland becomes Educational Trust. The article explained the trust's mission, quoted Gregory about agricultural preservation, and included a photo of the land Daniel had loved. Patricia's friends saw it first. By afternoon, Catherine said the country club was buzzing. Patricia tried to act like she knew all along, Catherine reported. But everyone remembers her bragging about the development plans. People are starting to ask questions. What kind of questions? The expensive kind. Like why Nathan claimed to control property that was never his. Why they took deposits from investors for a project built on land they couldn't access. The reputation damage is spreading fast. I didn't feel triumphant. Felt tired. This wasn't about winning or revenge. It was about protecting something precious from people who saw it only as a commodity. That night Nathan called. No threats this time. His voice was flat, defeated. We're selling the house. Patricia's trying to save face, but the social damage is done. Our investors are talking lawsuit. The architectural firm wants their fees. All because you couldn't just let us build a simple guest house. It was never about a guest house, Nathan. It was about respect. About remembering where you came from. About treating family like they matter. Easy to be righteous when you're not losing everything. I lost my daughter months ago, I said quietly. When she stopped making space for me at her table. when she chose Patricia's approval over her own mother. So yes, Nathan. I do know what it's like to lose everything. He hung up. I sat by the window, watching Daniel's roses sway in the November wind. Some losses were necessary. Some bridges needed burning to protect what mattered most. 3 weeks later, Lydia appeared at my door. No texts, no warning. She looked thin, exhausted. Different. Can I come in? I stepped aside. She walked to the kitchen, the same space where she'd spread those papers, and smiled her fake smile. This time there was no wine, no pastries, no performance. Nathan and I are separating, she said. Maybe divorce. I don't know yet. Poured us tea. Waited. The loan rejection started everything. Then the investors, the lawsuits, the gossip. Patricia blamed me for not getting your signature. Nathan blamed me for not controlling you. They both acted like I was incompetent for having a mother who wouldn't cooperate. She laughed bitterly. Cooperate with stealing her own land. I never said no to helping you, Lydia. I said no to being manipulated. I know. Her voice broke. I knew it at the time, Mom. I knew what we were doing was wrong. But Patricia kept saying you were being selfish. That modern families don't hoard assets when children need help. She made it sound reasonable, logical. And Nathan. She wiped her eyes. He made it sound like you were the problem. And you believed them. I wanted to believe them. It was easier than admitting I'd married someone who valued land more than integrity. Easier than facing what I'd become. I reached across the table and took her hand. What have you become? Someone who excluded her mother from Sunday dinner to impress people who don't actually care about me. Someone who tried to manipulate her own mother for money. She looked up at me. Someone I don't recognize. We sat in silence. Outside, winter birds gathered at the feeder Daniel had built. That land, Lydia said finally. Tell me about the trust. What it really means. I showed her the documents Gregory had filed. Explained the structure, the mission, the permanent preservation. It'll support agricultural education programs, community gardens, youth farming initiatives. Everything your father believed in. Lydia traced her fingers over Daniel's name. He would have loved this. He would have loved you making space for your mother at the table more, I said softly. But yes. He would have approved of protecting this land. I'm so sorry, Mom. For everything. The dinners, the manipulation, choosing Nathan's family over you. Patricia made you sound like an obstacle, and I. She swallowed hard. Let her. I let Nathan. I let them turn me into someone who'd hurt you. Why? The question I'd been holding for months finally emerged. Why was Patricia's approval worth more than mine? Because she had everything I thought I wanted. The big house, the social status, the important friends. She made me feel like I'd married up, like I was part of something bigger than teacher's kid from a farming family. Lydia's voice cracked. But all I really did was trade the people who actually loved me for people who wanted to use me. I pulled her into a hug. This daughter I'd raised and almost lost. She cried against my shoulder like she used to as a little girl, before Nathan, before Patricia, before she forgot that love matters more than status. What happens now? She asked finally. Now you rebuild. Figure out who you want to be. Make better choices. Can I come to Sunday dinner again? Smiled. My table always had a place for you, sweetheart. You just forgot to look. The divorce took 6 months. Nathan fought for shared custody, sold the house, moved to a smaller place across town. Patricia tried to maintain her social standing, but the gossip about the land trust scandal followed her everywhere. Lydia moved into a modest apartment near the elementary school where she'd gotten a teaching job. We had Sunday dinner every week. Just the two of us and her children. No performances. No fake smiles. Just family. In March, I received an invitation. The Holt Family Educational Land Trust was hosting its official dedication ceremony. Local schools were sending students. Agricultural programs from 3 counties were participating. The mayor would speak. Will you come? Asked Lydia. She nodded, her eyes bright with tears. The day was clear and beautiful. Spring flowers dotted the fields Daniel had loved. A podium stood near the old barn, decorated with banners showing smiling children learning to farm. 200 people filled the field. Gregory gave a speech about land stewardship and community legacy. The agricultural extension agent talked about the programs the trust would support. The mayor thanked me for my generous vision for the future. But the best moment came when they unveiled the plaque. The Holt Family Educational Land Trust. Established in memory of Daniel Holt, who believed land should serve community, not commerce. Preserved in perpetuity by Marion Holt, who honored his legacy. I stood before that plaque, Daniel's name carved in bronze, and felt him beside me. This was what mattered. Not Nathan's expansion plans. Not Patricia's social climbing. Community, legacy, love. Lydia stood with me, her arm around my waist. Dad would be so proud of you. He'd be proud of both of us, I said. We just took different paths to get here. That summer, Lydia's divorce finalized. Nathan moved to a different city. His reputation damaged beyond repair. Patricia sold her house and moved to Florida, unable to face the social consequences of her schemes. But I barely noticed their departures. I was too busy with the trust. Local schools brought students for field days. Children learned to plant vegetables, tend chickens, understand where food came from. The trust hired a full-time agricultural educator. Community gardens bloomed. Families who couldn't afford groceries worked plots and harvested fresh food. I volunteered twice a week, showing children how to distinguish weeds from seedlings, teaching them the patience required to grow something real. One afternoon, a little girl asked me, "Did you really give all this land away?" "I didn't give it away," I said. "I made sure it would always do what it was meant to do. Feed people, teach people, serve people who need it." "That's nice," she said, and went back to planting tomatoes. I thought about Patricia calling me a sentimental old woman clinging to dirt. About Nathan dismissing my technology-challenged confusion. About Lydia sitting silent while they mocked me. They'd been wrong about everything. The land wasn't dirt. It was legacy. And I wasn't confused. I was clear-eyed about exactly what mattered. That evening, Lydia came for dinner. She brought her kids, and we ate on my back porch while fireflies danced in the garden. "Mom," she said quietly, "I never thanked you." "For what?" "For showing me what integrity looks like. Even when it's hard. Even when everyone's telling you you're wrong." She gestured toward her children playing in the yard. "They'll grow up knowing their grandmother chose values over money. That means something." September brought the Trust's Harvest Festival. Local farms donated produce. Musicians played bluegrass under the oak trees. Children ran relay races between the garden rows. 300 people came to celebrate. I walked through the crowds, greeting farmers I'd known for decades, meeting families who discovered the community gardens, watching children explore the barn. This was what Daniel had dreamed of. Community built on shared earth and honest work. Patricia would have hated it. Too rustic, too common, not prestigious enough. But the smiles were real. The laughter genuine. Nobody cared about status or social climbing. They cared about tomatoes growing, about children learning, about community thriving. Lydia found me near the chicken coop. "There's someone who wants to meet you." She led me to a young couple with a baby. "Mom, this is Teresa and Marcus. They moved here last year. Marcus is starting a farming program for at-risk youth, and the trust is providing land for it." Teresa shook my hand. "Mrs. Holt, what you've done here is incredible. My brother struggled with addiction for years. Programs like this saved his life. Giving kids purpose, teaching them to grow things, showing them they can create something good, it changes lives." "That's what Daniel always believed," I said. "That land and honest work could heal people." After they left, Lydia hugged me. "You did it, Mom. You protected what mattered." I looked across the fields, golden in the autumn light. "We did it," I corrected. "You could have fought the trust. Could have tried to break it legally. But you didn't. Because I finally understood what it was really about. She smiled. And because Sunday dinners at your house are better than any mansion dinner party Patricia ever hosted. October came again. A year since that first painful Sunday when I'd stood holding apple cobbler, staring at a table with no space for me. Lydia called Tuesday morning. Mom, I'm planning Sunday dinner. Can you come? To your place? No. I want to host at yours if that's okay. I want the kids to eat where I ate growing up. Where Grandpa's roses still bloom. Where things matter more than they cost. Sunday arrived cool and bright. Lydia came early with her children, her arms full of grocery bags. We cooked together in my small kitchen, just like when she was young. The kids played in the garden, picking the last tomatoes of the season. We set the table for 5, every seat filled. No awkward gaps. No excluded family members. No performances for people who measured worth in square footage and stock portfolios. I made apple cobbler. The same recipe. The same scent of cinnamon and butter filling the house. As we sat down to eat, Lydia reached for my hand. Before we start, I want to say something. Mom, this past year taught me what I should have known all along. That family isn't about impressing people. It's about showing up, being honest, making space for the people you love, not just the people who can advance your social status. Her daughter interrupted. Why are you being mushy, Mom? We laughed. Real laughter, not the artificial kind from Patricia's dinner parties. We ate too much, talked too long, and when cobbler came out warm and golden, every plate was filled. Later, as Lydia helped me clean up, she paused by the window. Do you forgive me? I forgave you months ago. The question is whether you've forgiven yourself. She was quiet for a moment. I'm getting there. Therapy helps. So does having Sunday dinners where nobody's judging me. Good. I handed her a dish to dry. Because this table always has space for you. You just have to remember to show up. November brought the first planning meeting for next year's trust programs. Farmers, educators, community leaders gathered in the old barn to discuss expansion. Someone suggested adding beekeeping education. Someone else wanted a greenhouse for year-round growing. A teacher proposed field trip partnerships with every school in the county. I sat in the back, listening to people plan Daniel's legacy forward into the future. This was what preservation meant. Not keeping things frozen in time, but ensuring they continued serving their purpose generation after generation. Afterward, the agricultural educator approached me. Mrs. Holt, we've received grant applications from 3 universities wanting to study sustainable farming here. Your trust is becoming a model. Daniel would have laughed, I said. He was just a farmer who loved his land. He never imagined it would teach professors. That's because he understood something academics are just discovering. That land and community are inseparable. That growing food and growing people use the same principles. I drove home through fields turning gold and brown, preparing for winter. In the spring they'd bloom again. Children would plant seeds. Families would harvest food. The cycle would continue, protected and permanent, exactly as Daniel wanted. Patricia's development plans would have paved all this over. Nathan's guest house would have consumed the north field. Their vision saw property value. Daniel's vision saw people fed and educated and connected to earth. I'd chosen Daniel's vision. And in doing so, I'd reclaimed everything Lydia and I had almost lost. Christmas Eve, Lydia hosted dinner at my house. She'd asked permission first, wanting to create new traditions in the space where old ones still mattered. Her children hung stockings by the fireplace where Daniel used to read them stories. We baked cookies using my mother's recipes, the ones I'd taught Lydia decades ago. The house smelled like cinnamon and pine, like childhood and memory. Nathan sent presents for the kids but didn't visit. Patricia sent a card from Florida with no return address. Their absence felt like relief rather than loss. After the children went to bed, Lydia and I sat by the tree, its lights reflected in the window where Daniel's garden slept under snow. I saw Patricia's Christmas card, I said. Did you want to call her? Lydia shook her head. She made her choices. Made mine. We can't build a relationship on guilt or obligation. That's very mature of you. That's very you of me, she corrected. You taught me that lesson. Just took me a while to learn it. We sat in comfortable silence, watching snow fall outside. Finally Lydia spoke again. The trust saved me, Mom. Not just the land. The whole thing. Watching you stand up for what mattered, even when everyone said you were wrong. Seeing you choose values over convenience. It showed me who I wanted to be. And who's that? Someone like you. Someone who shows up for people. Who keeps promises. Who knows the difference between what costs money and what actually matters. I squeezed her hand. You're already becoming that person. Outside, the fields lay quiet under snow. Come spring they'd bloom again. Children would learn. Families would grow food. Daniel's legacy would continue. And at my table, every Sunday, there would always be a seat for my daughter. Spring returned, and with it, the trust's second growing season. Lydia volunteered on Saturdays, teaching elementary students about composting and soil health. Her children worked the family plot, learning the same lessons Daniel had taught Lydia years ago. One April morning, I found Lydia sitting by Daniel's roses, which were just beginning to bud. I remember helping Dad plant these, she said. I was 8. He let me dig the holes, even though I made them crooked. He said crooked holes grew straight roses if you loved them enough. She laughed. That sounds like Dad. Everything was a metaphor about character and patience. He wasn't wrong though. Look how they've grown. We sat together in the spring sun, surrounded by growth Daniel had planted decades ago. His roses, his land, his values taking root in another generation. Nathan called yesterday, Lydia said quietly. He's engaged to someone new. Patricia helped them meet, apparently. Someone from the right family. How do you feel about that? Relieved mostly. He found what he was looking for. Someone who'll play Patricia's games without questioning them. That was never me. No, I agreed. You were always more like your father. Too honest for social climbing. I forgot that for a while. But you remembered. That's what matters. The Trust's spring festival was larger than the fall one. 400 people came. Local news covered it. A state senator gave a speech about agricultural preservation. Children released butterflies they'd raised from caterpillars. I watched it all from the shade of the oak tree. This celebration of everything we'd protected. Not just land. Not just Daniel's legacy. But the idea that something should never be for sale. That community matters. That feeding people and teaching children trumps development profits. Lydia found me there, her kids muddy and laughing. Look what we harvested, her son said, holding up carrots still covered in dirt. Beautiful, I told him. Your grandfather would be proud. Mom says he was a farmer like us. The best farmer I ever knew. Summer brought unexpected news. The Trust received a significant donation from an anonymous benefactor. Enough to build a teaching barn and expand the youth programs. Gregory called with the information. The donor requested anonymity, but they included a note. In appreciation for showing that integrity costs more than money but returns greater dividends. Any idea who it's from? None. But they're familiar with your story. That much is clear. The teaching barn went up in August, built by local contractors who donated labor. It had classroom space, tool storage, and a covered area for workshops. A plaque by the door read, "Built on the foundation of values that last." Lydia helped me plant flowers around the entrance. Do you think Dad can see this? I think if he can, he's smiling. And if he can't, then we're carrying his smile forward for him. Same thing, really. We worked in comfortable silence, our hands in the same dirt Daniel had tended. 3 generations of Holtz had touched this soil. My grandchildren would touch it too. Not as owners or developers. As stewards. as students, as people learning that some things matter more than profit. That evening, as I locked up the barn, I found an envelope tucked under a flower pot. Inside was a check for another substantial donation and a handwritten note. Mrs. Holt, I attended Patricia's dinner parties for years. I watched her mock people, climb socially, measure worth in stock portfolios. Then I heard what you did. Chose legacy over money, values over status. It inspired me to examine my own priorities. This donation honors your courage. Thank you for showing us a better way. It wasn't signed. Didn't need to be. Someone had been watching. Someone had learned. Someone had changed their path because I'd refused to compromise mine. I folded the note carefully and took it home, adding it to the journal I still kept. Documentation, yes. But also evidence that standing up for what matters creates ripples far beyond what we can see. October returned again. 2 years since that first painful Sunday. 2 years of rebuilding, growth, and choosing what mattered over what looked good. Lydia called Tuesday. Mom, Sunday dinner at your place? I'm bringing apple cobbler. Smiled. I thought that was my job. I learned from the best. Time to carry the tradition forward. Sunday arrived clear and cool. Lydia came with her children, her arms full of groceries and a cobbler that smelled exactly like mine. We cooked together, laughing as her daughter spilled flour and her son snuck bites of ingredients. We set the table for 5. Every seat filled. No gaps. No performances. Just family, real and imperfect and present. The cobbler came out golden and perfect. As I served it, I thought about that first cobbler I'd brought to Lydia's house, the one that sat untouched while I stood unwanted at a full table. This was different. This was what Sunday dinners were supposed to be. Love served warm. Space made willingly. Family chosen not by obligation, but by showing up honestly and consistently. To Grandpa, Lydia's son said, raising his milk glass. To Grandpa, we echoed. And to Grandma, Lydia added, looking at me with clear eyes. Who taught us that the best revenge is living according to your values, even when everyone says you're wrong? Smiled. It's not revenge if you're just protecting what matters. Then to protecting what matters. We ate cobbler and talked about nothing and everything. Outside, Daniel's roses bloomed their last flowers of the season. The fields lay ready for winter, resting before spring's renewal. I'd stood at Lydia's table 2 years ago, holding dessert nobody wanted, watching a family that had no room for me. I'd been dismissed, excluded, manipulated. They'd wanted my signature, not my presence. My compliance, not my love. So I'd given them something else entirely. Not anger. Not revenge. Just a clear-eyed choice about what mattered more. Their approval or Daniel's legacy. Their dinner parties or my values. Being included in their games or preserving what was actually worth fighting for. The land would feed families forever. Teach children. Serve community. Patricia's development dreams had died, but something better had bloomed. Nathan's expansion plans had crumbled, but a legacy had grown stronger. And Lydia, she'd learned the hardest lesson of all, that the people who truly love you make space for you at their table, not because you have something they want, but simply because you belong there. I looked around my small table, every seat filled with people who'd chosen to show up, who'd chosen love over status, who'd chosen what mattered. The empty chair from 2 years ago, gone forever. And in its place, something infinitely better. A family rebuilt on truth, respect, and the understanding that some things should never be signed away. Not land. Not legacy. And definitely not dignity. I raised my glass to that. To choosing what matters. To protecting what's precious. To serving justice the same way I served cobbler. Warm, honest, and worth waiting for. What are you smiling about, Grandma? My grandson asked. Just thinking about dessert, I said. How the best things are always worth the wait. And as autumn light filled my kitchen, surrounding us in gold, I knew Daniel was smiling too. We'd protected what he built. We'd honored what he valued. And we'd learned that the sweetest revenge isn't revenge at all. It's just living well, loving honestly, and never compromising what truly matters. Not for anyone. Not even for a seat at their table. Because it turned out, my own table was exactly where I belonged.